Welcome to the Tattooed Truth Podcast with Anna Love, a space for embodied conversations for soul-led rebels. I'm your host, Anna Love, intuitive empowerment coach, subconscious healing guide, and no stranger to burning it all down to rise in truth. Here we dive deep into identity, healing, personal power, and what it really takes to lead a soul-aligned life. You'll hear unfiltered insights, real stories, and live coaching sessions with bold callers ready to break free and embody their next level. This is your invitation to reclaim your voice, rewire your patterns, and rise fully expressed. Let's get into it. Welcome to today's episode. Today, we're diving into one of the most transformational topics that I've ever personally lived through: how attachment shapes our identity in relationships and how to reclaim your sense of self after heartbreak or loss. Let's dive in. So, how do we lose ourselves in relationships, right? If you've ever found yourself saying, I don't know who I am without them, or maybe you've said, like me, I don't know who I am inside this relationship, you're not alone. Because we don't enter relationships as blank slates, right? We bring in all of our attachment patterns, our old stories, our subconscious programs from our childhood, things that we talk about here all of the time. This is how we attract and we live inside of the relationship, is based on these old programs. And for many of us, love was conditional growing up, which meant that we learned at a very, very early age that it's not safe to be our true self and that we have to have ego masks in order to gain connection, gain love. We learn that we have to be good in order to gain love. And we also learn that if we are, very expressive and we are very forthcoming with our desires, that it might be too much for certain people. So as adults, what we do is we unconsciously mold ourselves to our partners because that's what we learned we needed to do to gain approval with our parents, right? So I always go back to saying it's not really our fault what we're doing, but it is our responsibility to become aware of these patterns and to start shifting our habits and changing our programming, right? And that's what we talk about here on this podcast. So as adults, we start to adapt. We kind of figure out and they're doing it too, right? Our partner is typically doing it too. So you've got two people working from basically a child version of us, right? So when we're in these relationships, if we have trauma from our past, we get stunted at that age. Our emotional intelligence gets stunted. Our ability to relate gets stunted. And so we're maybe in our 50s or 40s or 30s or 20s having a relationship with another person of that same similar age, but really we're coming at certain conversations from an 8-year-old perspective or a 10-year-old perspective or a 6-year-old perspective. So both of us are bringing not our true selves to the table, or minimal times that we're being our true self, and then we're adapting. All right, we're checking out the other person, we're figuring out how can we perform, how can we please, and it's like a dance, right? And if you're starting out that way in a relationship, this inauthentic way of relating, then eventually something's going to blow up later on down the road, or the relationship is going to dissolve. So we are creating connection with the identity of, who am I when I'm with this person? So that is number freaking one. So let me ask you a question. Who were you before you learned that you had to earn love? Okay. And it's one of the questions that I ask my clients. Or who did you need to be? Like, when did you decide? When did you realize that you needed to be a certain way in order to receive love? Then the answer to my question is, who were you right before that? All right. Because we weren't born with all of these programs and these ideas and ways of being. These are learned behaviors. All right. So when we're talking about the subconscious blueprint of attachment, then we get into attachment styles. And attachment isn't just about how we love, it's about how we feel safe. Okay, so you may find yourself acting a certain way inside the relationship. And for many, many years, I didn't know about attachment styles. So I was feeling a certain way in my body, and I was, and maybe a little bit still, anxiously attached. I have since done a lot of inner work so that I am, I would say, the majority of securely attached, but there I can still feel that familiar, like, ooh, it's in my chest. And that's, something I'm very familiar with from past relationships, not only with my parents, but relationship as a 13-year-old, my very first relationship as a 15-year-old, that really 16, that lasted for 8 years. And then even relationships after that, even my marriage. So let's go through these attachment styles. Many of you may already be aware of these. And if this is an intro, then I would suggest going out and deep diving so that you can really gain a better understanding of which attachment style you are and how you are showing up inside relationships. So anxious attachment is that feeling that if I pull away, if that other person that I'm dating pulls away from me, then all of a sudden it creates anxiety in me. So they're backing up, and then I'm feeling some sort of way about being left, right? Being lonely. And then that person would chase. Okay. And we're going to get into a juicy story in a little bit about me and my 8-year relationship and how I used to act as an anxious attached person inside of this relationship. So when you chase that other person, you believe that your safety is dependent on the closeness that you have with this other person. And if they're pulling back and, you don't know why they're doing it, they're not telling you why they're doing it. They may be saying they're not doing it. They may be avoiding the topic or trying to tell you that, like, no, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. Why would you think that, right? Maybe even a little gaslighting about them doing it. That's going to amplify the anxiety that you are already dealing with, right? So avoidant attachment says, they're thinking, if I get too close, I may lose myself. Okay. And then again, this is all about safety from the perspective of the subconscious, right? And so they're thinking, like, okay, I'll just keep one foot out the door and one foot in. Okay. And I've actually been guilty of doing this in relationships too. After I got myself out of that 8 year, I almost went like full circle, like, I'll just be an avoidant then. Right. But I was doing it unconsciously because I didn't even know about these attachment styles. But now that I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, that was me too. So there's disorganized attachment, says, I want love, but I also acknowledge that it feels dangerous to want that love. And so, like the title says, it's disorganized, right? It's 1 minute I want love, the another minute I'm afraid of it. And when you're afraid of something, you're going to run from it, but then you want love, so then you go back towards it. And then there's obviously the securely attached, where you feeling very grounded and calm and centered inside yourself. Therefore, that's going to show up in the relationships that you are with. And you're also going to bring forth, most likely you're going, because you attract that of which you are, that of which you vibrate, and which frequency you're on. If you're securely attached before you get into a relationship, you're most likely going to call in a partner who's securely attached, which is the beauty of this, right? So it's important to note here that these are not character flaws, all right? They're nervous system responses. Like I said earlier, there are ways that your inner child has learned to survive emotional inconsistency, whether that was with a parent who was a narcissist, or, maybe you just got the distinct direct or indirect feeling that you weren't wanted, or you didn't get what you needed from your parents, okay, at the time. And our parents are not even to fault, but they are also responsible for learning about this and becoming aware and making shifts. And if you were born and raised in a family where parents didn't know about this and didn't care to know about it, or said, hey, nobody sent me a manual on raising parents, well, then you're going to be raised by parents who are unaware. And that's just the cold heart truth of it. So let's dive into my story. So I created an identity around being with this person. Like, who am I when I'm with this person? Who am I when he gives me attention? Who am I when he doesn't give me attention? Who do I have to be when he doesn't give me attention? Or what do I need to do to keep this attention on me? And that was a version of myself that I was willing to live. It was a false version of myself, it was a false identity. And I was willing to hide the true me underneath so many different layers. I put her in a box for years and I said, shh, don't come out. Just stay back there and we'll be fine. Because if you come out, he's not going to like you. Because he made it very clear to me that he liked a certain type of certain type of behaviors in the relationship, and I abided by those behaviors because I had such a craving and such a void within me. And many of you can relate to this, I'm sure, that void where you don't get that, you haven't fully realized yet that you are the one to be filling up that void. But when you don't know that crucial piece of information, that piece of gold, that you are the one, you start to look for other people and what do they want, and you think that whatever it is they want, I'll just fill this void up, and then I'll be enough, and then I'll be loved, and then I'll be in a secure relationship forever and ever and ever. So I was chasing unavailable love, right? Even though he was telling me and luring me in with love and connection and best friendness and companionship, all of that was true and real, but it was definitely conditional. Okay. It was conditional love. And I mistaken that for unconditional love. And then he was able to, and he was avoidant. So he was able to pull out and just go do whatever the fuck he wanted to. And I felt as though I didn't have any leverage. I didn't have any say. And so I would just, I don't know if you've done this before. When you're in a codependent relationship like that, you'll do anything to stabilize the relationship when it feels unstable, because it's almost like you can't breathe, like you can't die, like you feel like you're going to die. I remember one of the many times that he cheated on me. We were together for 18 months, and I had actual proof that it happened, because the other times up until that point, I didn't have proof. And that was my MO. Like, well, it feels in my gut like he's doing something, but and other people are saying that they're seeing certain things, but I didn't have actual proof. And they would say like, well, we think he's doing it, but we don't know. So I was like, well, if I don't have proof, it's not really true, right? Even though my freaking body knew it was true. So I didn't, at one point at the 18-year mark, I remember you guys saying, when I found out that they were actually like seeing each other and together for like a couple of days, like, first of all, I beat her up. Okay. I got angry, and she came into my high school and I fucking launched at her and ended up doing some damage on her mouth. And she had to like go to the dentist immediately. And it wasn't great for me either, because it didn't feel good in my body. Right. And I got suspended. But either way, I went into fight mode, because I was fucking angry. Right. So that happened. But I also remember him staying with me. And I was like, I threw an ultimatum down, like, she has to go. And he did. He let her go. And so because he let her go, I said, okay, well, there we go. I won. But I remember literally feeling as though I couldn't breathe without this guy. Like, there's no way that I can go on with my life without being in this relationship. That was a very low point in my life. This whole 8-year relationship was a very low point in my life. I'm not going to lie. I'm very transparent about my shit. And I think it's important to be transparent so that people listening will, maybe they know somebody who has dealt with this, or they can relate on a personal level, and I'm not shameful about any of it. It is what it is. And I've grown and evolved since then. And I'm proud of where I am right now. And I wouldn't be where I am or who I am, my identity, right? With me being connected to myself. Maybe I would have gotten there earlier than now, but I'm not judging that. I'm here now. Okay. So how do we break this identity bond? All right. That's an important part of the conversation here. So, we are typically the mirror for the person that we are with. All right. So it's when we're looking at a mirror reflection in the other person, and we are now shattering that, we're now throwing rocks at the mirror, and we don't know who we are anymore, because that relationship has ended for good. It's the loss of the person, okay, in front of us, but it's also the loss of us, who we were, right? As I talked about in the beginning, who did we need to be? How did we identify with this being? Who were we in the relationship, right? How do we identify? And then that goes away, okay? So one of the major things, and some of you may be like, why did you stay in an 8-year relationship? Why didn't you end it at a year and a half, or end it at maybe 2 years or 3 years or fucking 6 years? Like, come on, why 8 years, girl? Well, I was very afraid of who I was without him because I had, remember, buried her back in the boxes and put her on a storage shelf. And I didn't even know who I was. I don't even know that I knew who I was before I met him. So there was no like real me to go back to. Okay. So when you're believing that, and that's a belief, okay, that's a limiting belief. And it was real in my body. So it was a feeling as well. And what do I always say? I always say that if you're looking at your reality is created by the feelings that you feel. Okay. Because the feelings that you feel are creating action or non action. And so for me, it was a non action to leave that relationship because if I did, who would I be? So breakups feel like death. They do. And for me, I remember at the very end of it, he had yet another girlfriend. And this one, by the way, he was not willing to part with. Okay. And so I said, okay, you're not willing to part with her. Then it's time for me to part ways. However, I needed to let that simmer for a bit. It wasn't like I found out about her and then the next day I left. I had to start grieving the end of the relationship. And kind of did the same thing in my marriage where, I really did grieve the end of the relationship before the end of the relationship came. And you may be doing that as well, or sometimes you are faced with a situation where the relationship ends and then you go into grief mode. Okay. But for me, in the 8 year, I was definitely grieving the end of that for a while he was still seeing this other girl and I knew about it. And then I got my ducks in a row and I took off. And then once I left, I wasn't in pieces on the floor. Okay. It was a celebration of my power. It was a celebration of, holy shit, I just did that, right? It was actually like victorious for me. And I was looking forward to building and learning about myself, building up who am I and learning about myself. So you need to, ask yourself if you're in a relationship right now and your heart is already broken and you're about to launch out of that relationship and go find yourself, right? And go find your whole and complete you have to ask yourself, who am I when I'm not performing for love? All right. That's a big one because you don't want to go right back out into the world unhealed and then jump into another relationship because you're doing everyone a disservice, the person you're with, the new person, and yourself. So figure this out, right? Crack these codes while you're single, before you go out into another relationship. Who am I? All right. That's identity. Who am I when I'm not performing for love? And who am I when I stop chasing what hurts? Okay. Because I was chasing what hurt, right? Remember that anxious attachment? I was chasing that whenever he'd pull back, it hurt. So I'd chase. Okay. I lived in that hurt for all that time. And here's another one. Who am I when I meet myself fully without needing someone to reflect back in me in that mirror? Okay. So now when I look in the mirror, I see me fully, right? I can look into my eyes and I have a love and appreciation and respect for myself. Therefore, the person that I'm going to call in is going to be a mirror reflection of that version of me, that identity of me. All right. So this is I'm obsessed with this topic. I hope you are too. This is also very, very important. And I'm always about like new habits, creating new ways of being so that you don't just jump over one hurdle and you're like, there, I'm finally here. This is the end of it. No, there's no end. You need to move on until you're dead. That's the ending. Okay. But you're not dead. So just because you jumped over one hurdle doesn't mean you're done learning and growing. So you need to start with new habits. You need to bring in and practice new spiritual tools, right? And a lot of what I talk about are the tools, or you work with a coach who will teach you the tools. Okay. You need to make time for this. Make time to listen to your own needs before you start dating someone else, before you put the needs of another person in front of you. Noticing in your body, that's what I always love to bring us into, an awareness of what's the body feeling, okay? Because we have all of our mind thoughts, but then we're also feeling a certain type of way in our body. And I want you to connect your breath with the feeling of that of which is in your body. And just like telling yourself, like, I'm safe, right? Grounding yourself in, finding ways, somatic ways to ground yourself in. Breath work is one of them, putting both feet on the floor. I've got lots of hypnosises around this that are in my hypnosis portal, my monthly membership. So if you're looking for hypnosises that I create, I can absolutely point you in the right direction for that. And when you are in a place where you are the controller of your own nervous system, then that gives you power over any event that ever comes in again. So the other thing to do is to reprogram the story. All right. So, however, this person left you or you left them, reprogram it. We can't erase what happened. We can't change what happened, but we can change and be very mindful of the story that we're creating around it. Okay. So if there used to be like this version of you that said, oh, he left me or she left me, and now I'm alone and I don't like being alone, and this person makes me happy, and I'm not going to be happy unless I have this person, then those are all setting you up for failure statements. And if you believe those things to be true, you're fucked. I'm just going to be honest. So you need to change that story to that version of me is complete. Okay. This relationship is complete. Yeah. That identity is, I no longer identify with. All right. I'm finding more of me. I'm connecting more with me. And then look into that mirror. I'm going to give you a technique right now. This took me many, many times of doing it. Mirror gazing. Go to the mirror, see how long you can look at yourself in the eyes for. And for me, it wasn't more than 3 seconds. 3. Okay. I couldn't look at myself in a mirror for more than 3 seconds at one point in my life. And this was in my 40s. Okay. This wasn't even back when I was 24 and that relationship ended. I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you can only do 3 seconds, come back in 5 minutes and see what's there, and just keep attempting it. And I really want you to look at yourself in that mirror, and I want you to say, you are love. Like, you are love, right? Like, really connect with yourself. You are love. Talk to yourself with that language. Or you could say, I am love, right? But I like talking to myself. I belong to me first, right? I am whole and complete. And people like to talk about like affirmations. I'm not a huge affirmation fan until you've done the inner work. Okay. So, you don't need to walk around saying these things all day long if it's not resonating to you. So if you're saying them to yourself in the mirror, here's what is true. This is not an affirmation. You are actually love. Okay. That's no bullshit. That's not an affirmation. That's truth. You are love. You are God. You are source. You are energy. You are, you know, you are all there is. Looking at yourself, if you find love in that gaze, that's all there really is. So that's truth. That's not an affirmation. But affirmations work when you really are doing the inner work. So when you really truly believe that you are love, then you can throw some affirmations on top of that and they'll stick. Otherwise, it's just sprinkles on an ice cream cone of shit. And I've learned that through one of my coaches, which it's true. So why is it important to reparent yourself, which is what we're essentially doing? We're going back to that younger version of us, and we're telling that version, you are love, right? And you belong here with me. When you do that, your attachment wounds start to shift, right? From anxious or avoidant to secure. And then, like I said earlier, you attract that love that mirrors your wholeness instead of mirroring your wounds. All right. And really, that's all of it in a nutshell. If you're in a relationship and it's not great or it's not ideal, you have to look inward and say, what have I done to attract this person in? Why am I continuing to entertain a relationship with this person? Like, what's keeping me here? What am I believing about this? So, all right, y'all, if this episode spoke to your heart, please share it with someone who might need the reminder that, heartbreak can be very transformational. And for deeper integration, you can always find me on my Instagram, Heal with Anna Love. And I have lots to offer there, from freebies to paid offers to working with me one-on-one. So until next time, remember that your radiance is your rebellion. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Tattoo Truth Podcast. If this episode lit something up in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, leave a review, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a truth bomb. If you're craving deeper support, guided healing, or a space to reclaim your voice and power, check the show notes for ways to work with me. Remember, your truth is not too loud, too bold, or too much. It's exactly what this world needs. Keep showing up, stay wild, stay true. I'll see you next time.